I am also a developer for an open source Yara distributed scanner, which is called Clara. So if you run Yara in your systems, if you want to have a private virus total retro hunt, check out Clara. It's publicly available, and you can deploy it on your system. But enough about what I'm doing. A little bit about my team, and those who might not know what GREAT means. It comes from Global Research and Analysis team, and basically we are focusing on threat intelligence and highly advanced APT attacks. So basically this means that we're focusing on attacks against banks, against governments, against power plants, and everything in between. So basically this is what we're doing. This is our research that we've been done in the past years, and of course it started with Stuxnet DoQ. Who heard about Stuxnet? Perfect. Everybody heard about Stuxnet. Stuxnet DoQ, but then there's more. And in the past years, this is like 2016, and before, we also researched about Carbanak, about Equation. Anybody heard about Equation? Satellite Turla, okay? And many more. Well, if you ask me why I didn't include 2017 or 18, is because our research combined in 2018 is more than everything you see here on the slide. So we're currently tracking more than 140 different APT groups in the wild, only that we discovered only in 2018. But before that, I would like to ask you a question. And I would like to ask you, what if you type war in Google, what do you expect to find? And Google, of course, will give you images such as this one, or this one, a tank, or like some battlefield. So usual images that you can associate them with the word war. But then, if I ask you to search for InfoWar, what would you find on Google? Not that one, yes. You might find images like this one, which is kind of like, you know, what the hell, guys, you know? Like, okay, this is Trump, fine. We have Terminator, sure. We have North Korea, okay, sure. But you have like a bomb, we have a grenade with keyboard notes, like what the heck? But actually, the InfoWar looks like this, or like this. InfoWar can happen around us, or right now, while we are here together watching a presentation. Well, you are. Or InfoWar can happen while you drive, and everywhere around you. And the problem is, people don't realize that InfoWar is closer to them than they expect it to be. And this is the problem, this is the main problem. And in order to understand why this happens, we have to look back in the past, and we have to understand what happened in the past. And those are some of the most important APT campaigns that we found out and we discovered, and I would like to briefly go over them just a bit. So you heard about Stuxnet. Basically, it was a malware that was trying to infect the Natanz nuclear facility. The malware was designed to fake to output wrong info on the computers that were controlling the uranium enrichment plants. So basically, those computers, the SCADA computers that were controlling the uranium enrichment centrifuges, they were showing normal values, but the malware was actually destroying those centrifuges. And the rest is history. Then we have the DoQ platform, the Tilde platform, which basically was a campaign that started around 2018 up until 2015 with DoQ 2.0, which actually hit my company. They hit Kaspersky, they attacked us. They managed to breach us with 3 days, and they were trying to steal our info about our latest research against also them, to see like if we caught them or not. of course, no, this is what you do. Dark Hotel, interesting campaign. Basically, they were trying to infect VIP targets that were going to VIP hotels. So of course, if you want to infect a company, or if you want to infect somebody important in a company, what do? Well, you can attack him. You can attack him while he's at work, but you know, like you have to go past firewalls, you have to go past CMs, you have like, you know, it's like kind of pain in the ass. Rather, you can infect his computer when he goes and checks in at various hotels. So what did attackers do? They went there, they infected the hotel network, then they saw what guests are gonna arrive, and they were infecting the Wi-Fi traffic, the Wi-Fi, basically the internet line, and then they were like injecting malware into their guests' traffic. And this is how they were trying to infect it. Pretty clever, I might say. Equation Group, one of the most highly sophisticated English-speaking groups, they achieved persistence modifying the hardware firmware such that when you were reinstalling the operating system, from a fresh copy, safe copy, the operating system would get infected again. So those are super cool. Lazarus, you might have heard about Lazarus. Basically, they stole and they tried to steal more money, around $2 billion. Basically, they made a mistake, and some of the money didn't get transferred. They basically changed A instead of O instead of A, and it was like kind of fuck up. But you know, they actually managed to steal some money, so that's okay. Satellite Turla. They were trying to hide the CNC servers using satellites. So basically, we knew that the CNC server was located at IP address X, but then where is this IP address X located? Well, it's a fucking continent. Okay, good luck finding it. So basically, they were hijacking satellite connections, and then they were like sitting somewhere in the continent because the satellite broadcast to a continent, and then they were like receiving the hijacked traffic. Good luck finding them. So where next? You know, we thought quite well about this question, and we found out that there are three components of the information war. The cyber espionage and sabotage component, which both of them, they use malware. And we're pretty good at malware, detecting malware. Well, or that's what we like to think. We know how to tackle malware, and those components, they will use it in order to achieve to be successful in when they try to penetrate any networks or anything. But then there's the third component, and there's this mass opinion manipulation. And this component, unfortunately, wasn't or hasn't been thoroughly focused on. And we believe that in the future, more and more APT actors, they will use this component in order to achieve their goals. And today we're going to talk about this component. We're not going to talk about malware anymore. We're going to talk about mass opinion manipulation and other stuff related to this one. But before we talk about the present, we have to go on the past. And the first question is, do you happen to know the name of the guy in this picture? And I'm not talking about the guy on the left, which is kind of dead. So, bingo. So, this guy here, Ion Mihai Pacepa, he was a Romanian counterintelligence officer. He held the highest rank possible, and he defected. In the 70s, he went away. He went to the West Germany embassy, and then from there he was moved onto a secret plane to America. And then while he defected, he was the highest ranking intelligence officer, and basically he took a lot of secrets from the Romanian intelligence with him. After that, in one of the documentaries from our national television, TVR1, I think, basically they're saying that when after he defected, Ceausescu no longer trusted the security, so-called Securitatea. He no longer trusted them. he started trusting more and more. He put his trust more and more on his wife, and from then onwards, you know what happened. So Ioannis Pacepa, he wrote 2 books while he's still alive actually. This guy is still alive. He wrote 2 books after he defected. One of them is called Horizontul Roșii, Red Horizons, and the other one is called Disinformation. Well, I read one of them, and I tend to believe some parts of what he wrote. Especially this one is pretty interesting because he talks about the mechanics and the tactics that Romanian's intelligence agency was using, and the tactics that we learned from the Russians. And we're gonna go into more detail about that one. But then, the first thing that he talks about is called desinformatia. And desinformatia, in the words of Colonel Rolf Wangerberth, which basically he was director of Department X. Department X in the East Germany was the Department of Disinformation. So Disinformatia, in his own words, he said, our friends in Moscow call it desinformatia. Our enemies in America, they call it active measures, and this is my favorite pastime. So basically what disinformatia is, and Pacepa says it very well in his book, he says, if you're good at disinformation, you can get away with anything. And I think that's pretty accurate. On the Wikipedia page, we see that the term was actually, they say that the term was actually coined by Stalin himself. Well, this is what Pacepa says, and I'm actually not, I don't believe this one I don't fully believe this one, but disinformatia is itself actually disinforming people. And the reason is that when they created this term, they wanted to give it like a Latin root instead of giving it a Slavonic root, so that it sounds Latin, so that it sounds that it was created by the Western agencies. So the term itself is disinforming. Okay, now I would like to show you 5 questions, 5 statements, and I would like to raise your hand if you believe that 5 of them are true, 4, 3, 2, or 1, or none are true. So the first statement is AIDS was created in a lab. The second one, the earth is flat. The third one, Napoleon was short. We eat banana clones, and Einstein failed at maths. Okay, so who believes that all 5 statements are true? Who believes that 4 statements are true? 3 statements? Oh, okay. 2 statements? More people? 1 statement? Alex? Okay. None of the statements are true. So we have some people here. Well, actually, the only true statement is this one. And we have to actually think why we believe the others are actually true. Well, the myth with Napoleon was actually disinformation, or it was kind of an error. It comes from the way the French measured it comes from the difference between the French foot and the English foot. So when they measured Napoleon, they measured him in French feet, and basically he's 5 feet 2 inches, and basically that was his height of 5 feet 2 inches. But actually he was 1.7 meters. Basically 10 centimeters higher. And this is due to the fact that the French feet is a little bit longer than the English feet, but then they all reported in English feet. So he was average guy, but then from then onwards, everybody thinks that he was short. Then Einstein failed at maths. Basically when a news magazine came to Einstein and they said, dude, what the heck, did you fail at maths? He said, no. He replied and told them, like, I never failed in mathematics. And even before he was 15, so at a very early age, I mastered differential and integral calculus. So this makes sense, no? I mean, he was a physics genius. Of course he knew maths, what the heck? And he had to know maths from beginning. Okay, but these are some components of activnia mierie, which basically means active measures, which basically means active measures is a Soviet term for actions of political warfare producing politically correct assessments and measures ranging from media manipulations to special actions involving various degrees of violence. So let's go a little bit in depth into and focus on this thing and see what it means. First of all, active measures, they include kind of 3 types of propaganda. And if we look at the LSE Soviet Subversion and Propaganda, a book that was published 1 year ago, on the page 17 we see that they're using white, gray and black propaganda. And what does this mean? Well, white propaganda comes from known sources that do propaganda. So think of it as Russia Today, or think of it as some well-known Romanian TV news broadcasting channel. Yeah? So we know that they're doing propaganda, but they're doing it anyway. Well, black propaganda is different. It comes from an unknown source. But then its purpose is to try to trick people into believing it and try to make people act differently than before. So what happened? There was an event during the Czechoslovakia invasion, and there were some people who were protesting against this stuff. So there was a group that they created like a force or like a meetup group, like we're doing it today, and basically they were against this kind of the invasion of Czechoslovakia by the Russians and other communist countries. But actually their actions were to divert and to block people from achieving their goals into spreading their words against the Czechoslovakian war. So basically this is kind of the stuff that black propaganda does. Basically you create some groups or you do some actions that they try to actually do the opposite, but in a hidden way. Of course, black propaganda is not known. You have to like look closely at their actions. And we can see some examples in Romania quite as well. Now, grey propaganda is something different. Grey propaganda is kind of like in between. And basically we have an example about the Americans and their Vietnam War. So a lot of people were against Vietnam, and the Soviet counterintelligence guys, they said, okay, how can we turn more people against America? Well, simple. Let's create an organization that is actually trying to militate for world peace and also against the Vietnam War. And they tried to add a lot of VIP people. So one of the people who got into this organization was actually Pablo Picasso himself. And this was interesting because the only purpose of this organization was to gather VIP people to trick them into speaking their mind against a common goal for the Russians. So it was kind of an organization that was doing good, but in the back, like its purpose was to do actually propaganda against the Americans. Okay, so what's the cookbook? Simple. Front organizations, you know about them, agents of influence, infiltrate the media, fake stories and forgeries. And let's see what this happens. So, AIDS was created by the Americans. I spoke with some of my medics friends, and they all told me that during that period, for these years, and for the level of the technology and medicine, it wasn't possible for humans to actually create AIDS at that time. I don't know now. And we have also some other examples of diseases that actually mutated to humans, like the swine flu. So that's also something that mutated. Okay, so from a secret document that was publicly released not so long ago, we see that the Americans were calling it Operation Infection, and basically they say that a paper on the 17th of July 1983 there was a newspaper in Pakistan that said a well-known American and scientist and anthropologist in New York claimed that AIDS is believed to be results of Pentagon experiments and to develop new and dangerous biological weapons. This is the starting point, a newspaper in Pakistan. From then onwards, it was reported furthermore by other news media, and then it started spreading globally. And actually, it was interesting because AIDS started in 1980s, and people were actually, the Americans, didn't know what to do about it. Only after 2 years they actually realized, and they said scientists had named the disease in 1982, so 2 years later, and then the following year a virus, HIV virus, was identified. However, the origins of HIV/AIDS were still obscure, so the Americans didn't know what happened. And bam, in 1983, this newspaper appeared. So this is not quite deadly, you know, like it didn't affect a lot. It did affect a lot of people, but it wasn't like something disastrous. But then something else happened. There was an incident. Basically, in 1968, somebody in East Germany published a book, and the book's name was "Who's Who in the CIA." And basically, what they did, they published a list of names of CIA intelligence officers. Half of the names were true, half of the names were false. What happened later, a poor guy, Daniel Mitrioni, who was working for the US agency, but he wasn't in the CIA. He was killed by a terrorist, who the terrorist said found his name in this document created by the Eastern Germany. So poor guy got killed because he had the same name as a guy who was listed in a fake document. Furthermore, 1979, there was a Muslim attack in Mecca. So immediately after, sensing an opportunity to weaken the American position in the Middle East, Soviet diplomats spread a rumor, just a rumor, saying that the America in Israel were behind these attacks. So basically, they didn't write anything. They didn't say, like, they didn't do anything in writing. They just said, hey, you know, like, I know for sure it's the Americans, it's the Israelis. Pass on, it's okay. What happened later? An attack by a student union, a US embassy was attacked, an American was kidnapped, 2 Pakistani employees were died, and a Marine Guard was shot, killed. Just coming from a rumor. That was it, a rumor, nothing else. So this kind of fake news can have deadly consequences. And then you have to ask yourself, how much does it cost to actually deploy this kind of measures? And again, in the same paper from CIA that now is publicly available, we can see that a conservative estimate puts the actual annual cost of Soviet active measures to $3 billion. $3 billion in 1980s is actually $9 billion in current money. So the Russians were spending $9 billion only for active measures, only for trying to do this kind of stuff in order to subvert their enemies. But they were not the only ones. The Americans were doing it the same, equally the same, I must say. So this is an example of a leaflet propaganda bomb. So if you don't know what this is, it looks like a bomb. It has the shape of a bomb, but it's not a bomb. It's basically a shell filled up with propaganda flyers. And basically you would put up the propaganda flyers, you would release the bomb from the plane, and then those flyers would spread all around the battlefield. And this is one of the methods that you would try to reduce the morale or increase the morale of your troops. And by the way, this is kind of the stuff that we know as white propaganda from back then. But then we have another example, Radio Free Europe. Who knows about Radio Free Europe? Perfect. I'm really sorry, I forgot all the goodies at home. I had goodies, but at home. I'll bring them next time. Radio Free Europe. Yeah. So basically, again, in a paper that now is publicly available, they said communist collaborators in the satellite countries, they were saying that the Radio Free Europe indicated some names, and they were like basically reading some names and broadcasting them. And the people who were denounced of Radio Free Europe, they were actually changing their names or attempted to conciliate the workers they terrorized. So people were ashamed when they heard their names on this radio. And also, in order to counter this Radio Free Europe, the Soviet bloc people, they were actually deployed more than 1,500 jammers, but it wasn't enough. Interesting enough, from a paper that from the actually the US consul from the West Germany back then, he said that it is regrettable that Europe herself did not take the initiative at the time. It is also regrettable that Radio Free Europe is still entirely financed by the USA, and that the Europeans have failed to show financial interest for Radio Free Europe. So basically they're saying, the Americans are saying, nobody else is financing this stuff. But later they're saying, apart from the fact that the German government grants the license for this European broadcasting station, which operates in the German territory, there is no reason why Radio Free Europe should fall under German control. So in other words, yeah, you should give us some more money. We shouldn't be the only ones paying you the money, but you shouldn't have control over it. We should have full control over the broadcasting station. Okay, it's in your country, but we should have full control. So basically, if you want to read more about this Radio Free Europe and the way CIA used it to actually promote active measures on their own, there's a book. I highly recommend this book, and basically it covers everything. And by the way, Radio Free Europe is still available. You can listen to it, but you know, things changed. What about somewhere else? What about Romania? So in Romania, things were pretty bad in the 80s. And also, people were trusting the scientists and science a lot, not like now. So whatever scientists were saying, it was actually common law, and people were actually believing what the scientists were saying. And who knows what this is? Cartela. Yeah, basically it's food ratios. So basically it's a food ratio, and basically you would stamp each day that you would get like your food ratio. And this is the food ratio that you would receive. Funnily enough, there was this information spread to the public in the media. Basically scientists saying that a healthy adult should eat no more than 1 kilogram of chicken per month. Oh, interesting. Conveniently, no? What was the ratio? 1 kilogram. Perfect, no? So basically they were saying for people to believe that, you know, it's okay to eat just 1 kilogram. That's fine. You can live healthy with that. Of course, you can live healthy. I'm not sure if you live happily, but that's it. Okay, so let's look at the present time. Things changed. Things changed, and I'm pretty sure that we are facing new methods. So basically, Noah Tavlin, in his YouTube video, which I highly recommend to watch it, he says that our desire for quick answer may overpower the desire to be certain of their validity. We live in a world where things change constantly, like really fast. You want your answer immediately. You want to search for Google to see the weather, you want it now. You want to search for Google for a new food recipe, you choose the first link that appears. And basically he's saying that whenever we want to fact check something, humans nowadays, they just tend to choose the first thing that comes upon their search. So they don't want to further check the second or the third link or the second page of Google. You know, a good friend of mine said that if you want to hide something, you should put it on the second page of Google. Who checks the second page of Google? Thank you. He also mentioned the circular reporting, which some of you might know. basically it's the fact that a news publication publishes something, and then a second news publication, let's call it B, reports from A, and then C reports from B, and then D reports from C, and so on. This is not okay, in my opinion, but at least they're spreading information that is valid. Now, the problem is when news outlet number A starts spreading false information. This information will propagate throughout the other news outlets, and in the end, it will end up as something completely new. Nobody knows where it came from, but it's just there. And then basically, they say, you know, my source is news publication number X, so I'm okay. I just took that piece of information. Why people believe that this happens, it's for three reasons. First of all is tribalism, confirmation bias, and dangers of debunked ideas. Well, confirmation bias, you might know about it, is the fact that if a person has the same views as you have, statistically, you are more inclined to believe her rather than somebody else. Because in the past, you had the same views as that person, so you agreed with that person. So when this person comes and says something new, and the other person says, no, you're bullshitting, you actually tend to believe, statistically, you tend to believe the person that you are have a confirmation bias upon herself. Dangers of debunked ideas is another phenomenon that is very, very dangerous. And this happens when somebody launches a story. It may be true, it may be false, it may be fake. And then this story stays for a long period of time, and then afterwards it is actually believed to be true. But people they do not, even though this story was actually debunked and debunked and debunked, people tend to believe stories that were stayed on for long enough. And this is the AIDS story. Sorry, this is the vaccine story. So there was one paper, 1997, that said vaccines cause autism. It was debunked and debunked and debunked, but at a later time, not right then. Even though the story was proven to be false, we can still see people today saying that, oh, but did you read this, this research paper? What the fuck? Then we have another problem. In the latest Eurobarometer survey, which the European Union is doing it every year, basically they're saying that more than ever, European citizens see their country's membership to the EU as a good thing. Very good. So all EU countries, most of the people see it as a good thing. But then they asked, okay, do you consider that your country's membership to the EU is a bad thing? Who do you think was the first in the rankings? I'm sorry, I don't think you can see the numbers, but it's quite good. So anybody can guess? UK. Perfect. 22% of people in UK said it's a bad thing that they're in the EU. Second country, Romania. 21%. 21% of Romanian people that were interviewed in this, yeah, maybe, they say, people from a specific geographic location, they say that it's a bad thing that they're in the European Union. And after the referendum, which I think you all know about the referendum, I've seen messages of raw exit. I've seen a lot of raw exit messages, and this is like quite worrisome, you know, like what the heck? In the same survey, they said the European average, the abuse of personal data, and as well as fake news and disinformation are lowest ranked threats. So from all European countries, fake news is lowest ranked threat, apart from Latvia, Sweden, and Romania. In Romania, the threat of fake news is 24%. Threat of fake news and disinformation online find its highest relative support. So in Romania, the highest threat is fake news. This is what they're saying. Now, a study conducted by a well-known organization sponsored by the Soros Foundation. You know, it might be true, it might be false. They're saying something interesting, that the Balkans are more susceptible for fake news. Thank you very much. And basically they're saying that the media literacy rankings, and they rank the countries. Finland, which by the way, this year they're celebrating 100 years of existence, and they created a huge mega library. So a huge mega library. What do we have? Finland is highest. Macedonia is lowest, and Romania is like on the 90th percentile here. So the problem is that if you don't have, if you have an illiterate population, then people tend to believe more easily fake news. This is not new for you, of course, but it has correlations. We're gonna discuss a bit later about this one. Now, fact-checking report. Those guys from the MIT, they said that they conducted more than 300 surveys and 90 interviews to gather various perspectives on fact-checking policies. Basically, they went to various publications and they said, do you fact-check your news? Do you check what you're saying? Do you make sure that what you're publishing is not fake? And basically they said that the study focused on not on the watchdog efforts, but rather on the in-house quality control that publications do before a story goes to print. So basically, if they check the news or not. And basically they saw that more than 34% they use fact-checkers. Only 1/3 use fact-checkers, actually fact-checkers. Others, they use like a variety of others, like from authors, editors, combination, and everything. Furthermore, fact-checkers, on average, they get $19 per hour, up to $30 per hour, for something that I think it's an immensely important job. How many minutes do I have left? Good, thank you. So this is very important for a job that it's your main task is to not spread fake news. They get paid really low. And this is one of the problems with media. The other problems, yeah, question. Perfect. Fake fact-checking websites. Yeah. So add this one to the mix, and we see that the future is not looking so bright. But you know, this is where we are. Add the bots to the mix, and then of course you might have heard about the this summer's scandal about the Russian trolls. And who knows about the agency? Who heard about the agency? Basically, it's a St. Petersburg building where you can read it on the motherboard, you can read it on Vice, on New York Times. Basically, it's a building where people are paid to be internet trolls. And this lady here, Kate Starbird, I'm really sorry if the text is not good. She basically analyzed a lot of their tweets before Twitter released all their metadata, which is perfect. Now she's doing an amazing research because she has the content. She can see where this data came from. Before that, she made a research from Twitter publicly available data. And basically in this data, she said that she correlated two focus groups. Those groups were arguing, it doesn't matter what they were arguing against. And in those two groups, she found out people in gray that were tweeting with a specific pattern. Sometimes they forgot to remove their metadata and they said, America Great Again supporter, location St. Petersburg. Location Vladivostok. What the fuck? Seriously? So this kind of data and other kind of metadata, and basically she said that, you know, from my research, there are guys sitting at the same computer controlling 2 or more accounts arguing with each other. Basically there's one guy arguing with himself all the time. But then this is useful because due to confirmation bias and tribalism, people from in this sphere, they are more likely to agree with what people in the orange part say. People in this sphere who are against the people on the left are more likely to argue with the people in the gray area in their sphere. And basically they live in two bubbles, and basically you, the people, the person in the gray, you control both sides, and you can manipulate both sides just by arguing with it yourself. That's crazy, no? So basically, in her words, there are paid trolls sitting side by side somewhere in St. Petersburg, hate quoting each other account. That's it. We have another account, another example of pro-Brexit Twitter account with 120,000 followers that was proven to be part of their Russian disinformation campaign. Now it's blocked. 100,000 Twitter followers. Anybody has 1,000 Twitter followers? I don't have. So, you know, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. Now, who knows this guy? Who personally knows this guy? Well, you know, there are some people who actually talked with him. So, in the beginning, there was Guccifer, with his real name, Marcel. This Marcel guy, he was a taxi driver. In his free time, was a Romanian hacker. He himself said, in the style of Gucci and light of Lucifer. Nice. He basically had no skills. He was doing, he was brute forcing passwords. And he was good at social engineering, and he knew how to correlate public information, and he hacked some of the pretty interesting people. Colin Powell, Corina Crețu, George Mayer. This is publicly well known. And he also called the guy who was in charge of Romanian intelligence services, and he asked him money to not spit out his data, and of course he got in jail after that. So what the fuck. But then, let me introduce you Guccifer 2.0. Who knows Guccifer 2.0? Who personally knows Guccifer 2.0? Okay. It might be here, you know, I never know. So, Motherboard spoke to Guccifer 2.0. Allegedly, Romanian hacker. Romanian hacker. That's what he said. He doesn't like Russians, and I hate attributed being to Russia. Sure. And they talk to him, and then basically, of course, like, what do you do? Like, so you're Romanian, of course. Let's start a conversation in Romanian. No, I mean, what the hell? And this guy, Lorenzo, he started asking him in Romanian some questions. And where are you from? Romania. And then he said, aș vrea să vorbesc în română. I want to speak to you in Romanian. Would you like to speak in Romanian? And then he says, vorbiți limbă română? Okay. And then Lorenzo says, why did you put Russian metadata in the first batch of documents? And he says, este filigranul meu. Puteți găsi alte filigrane. Oare nu știți ce este filigran? And then he does a lot of other mistakes, like this one, or v-am spus deja, încercați să-mi verifica, which basically it's like he makes grammatical error in Romanian. Am mult de făcut, again grammatical error. But then I got interested and I said, like, what the fuck, filigran? Anybody heard about filigran? Well, Google heard about filigram. If you search, it's my watermark. No, yeah, but if you search on Google, it's my watermark, which makes sense in English. You get this one. Check it out. Check it out on Google Translate. So, okay. Yeah, sure. I don't know, but would you say it as a Romanian? It's my. And then Guccifer 2 said he's Romanian. Yeah. clearly, and I'm not saying it's true or not, but then others are saying that he was actually a Russian guy. It might be false flags, it might not be false flags, you know. Yeah. It fits. Sure. Guccifer might be like Moldavian hacker. What about this guy? So you might have heard about this guy, and basically his Facebook page was closed, and he was anti-government, anti-system, blah 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 blah, and his Facebook page was blocked for some hours, and it made me think, you know, like, if I asked somebody, if I go and ask you, would you like to block a Facebook page? So first of all, do you have Facebook? You might say yes or no, and then if I were to give you money to block a just go on that specific Facebook page and just click report page. That's it. Just report a page. Would you do it? Would anybody do it? Thank you. Thank you. What about if I give you some money? Would you do it for €1? No. Come on. So I come to you on the street. Yeah, I see you on the street. Like you're walking on the street, minding your own business, you know, like la 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 la. Hey, civic citizen, would you like to report a Facebook page for €2? 4? Huh? Come on, €10? I come to you and say, like, I'm giving you €10 right now. Just go on your phone, report a page, and that's it. There are no consequences. €20? €20.50. Anybody would report the page for €20? Nobody? Really, nobody? Come on. Thank you. Thank you. Now, exactly, write a bot, you know, to blow. But it needs to be real accounts. It needs to be real accounts. It can't be like bot accounts. Now, multiply this one with 1,000 persons, and you can block whatever page you want. You can silence the free speech of like most people. Yeah, you have like this activist person, you have like this journalist person, and they're publishing stuff on their personal Facebook page, and then you get 1,000 people, they report him, and then what would Facebook do? Block him for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, it doesn't matter. You silence his speech. And how much does it cost? €2,000? And the budget is $9 billion? It's nothing. So this is one of the problems. The second problem is internet balkanization, and if you don't know what internet balkanization means, is that each countries, they tried to create their own internet. So we have examples with Russia, like Vkontakte instead of Facebook, Yandex instead of Google, and other things like this. But we also have examples in China, we have examples in Iran, and some of the countries, they try to create their own internet. Of course, in order to control it, because it's easier if you created the application rather than somebody else, a US government, like, or the servers are in US, it's harder to block. And you know, remember what happened in Turkey, no? They banned Wikipedia entirely because there was this article against this against Turkish government. So this happens in Iran. They blocked Telegram, and this happens in most of the countries that the freedom press is low. So most of the countries that the freedom press index is pretty low, they tried to balkanize their internet, and this is one of the problems. And my personal hope or task is that I would not want to see either Romania or any other countries in Europe turn black. And I hope that you might actually help with this task, and we're gonna achieve something so we don't go into there. Turkey is kind of turning black a bit, and you know, Bulgaria here, and Hungary. Unfortunately, Hungary is also like not so good. Now, also, in those countries that are black, we have a problem of privacy. So if you try to define privacy, those are some of the definitions. My personal favorite definition is freedom to be left alone. the state of being free from unwanted or undue intrusion or disturbance in one's private life or affairs. And you might have the illusion of privacy. Now, that's a problem because people try to say, they say, oh, you know, I'm private enough, doesn't matter, or 5 minutes, or I'm private enough, I don't have anything to hide, or nothing to hide argument. And this like, if it's something that you would like to take away when you leave well, after I finish, is this one. The nothing to hide argument is fucking bullshit. And people say that, you know, I have nothing to hide. I'm happy to give out all my secrets away, put my life, my private life online, everything is fine. Sure, it's nothing bad if you do that. You have the right to do it, like it's your life, for fuck's sake. But then there are other companies who are happy to collect all the data that you're giving out for fucking free. And then you're giving out the data and you say like, oh, you know, like this, I've been there, I've been that. I support this political party, I support these guys, I believe in free speech, I believe in Black Lives Matter, things like that, yeah? So every one of you have something that you believe in, and that's fine. Companies, they try to go there, and if you put it online without restrictions, companies will come and they will claim that one. And what happens after? Cambridge Analytica happens. And then two events that I never thought would happen, happened. Not directly because of this one, but this was also a contribution. I'm pretty sure about this one. It's not entirely Cambridge Analytica's fault. But then you might say, oh, you know, Cambridge Analytica is dead, although they renamed their company. What about this one? Anybody knows about this one? Advanced Symbolics? Nice. Do you work for them? Okay. I would like to ask you some question. So, they say, as a market research leader, we use our patented AI technology, Poly, they have a face for the AI, like weird face, to proudly disrupt the industry and set new standards in behavioral research. Behavioral research. You know what this means. Basically, they correctly predicted the outcome of the Senate vote that happened in America like some weeks ago. And they correctly said that how many seats the Democrats and how many seats the Republicans are gonna take. And this was a bot. This was an AI. So, is privacy dead? Is something that is anything that we can protect ourselves? Yes, I think so. So the fact that you are here, the fact that you are trying to learn more stuff, that's first thing. We have tools that we can protect ourselves, like VPNs, very important. We have ways to, like different operating systems, some of them that they do not collect a lot of data, some of them collect. So you have some options, you can do something. But first of all, user education. We can protect against fake news, manipulation, disinformation by educating people, and then by having quality journalism, and then by having user education. But also, quality journalism is very important. And Lithuania, for example, they started creating an AI that is able to identify fake news in 2 minutes. And of course, they are good at identifying fake news in Russian. But they also said that this AI is capable of identifying texts in other languages. So this is a start. In Romania, we don't have this AI, but we have these guys. And I think it's very important, if you don't know them, go check out their web pages, go check out their Facebook, and see what they're doing it. And this is the causes I believe in. And if you have some money to spare, donate to those guys because they're doing really good work, and I think it's very important to actually have some quality journalism, because in Hungary, for example, they just relocated themselves. All the propaganda companies, they created this huge mammoth company, and it's gonna be like state controlled, and journalism, I'm afraid, is kind of like dying in Hungary. So quality journalism is pretty good. Don't forget about the information war, and the fact that this is only one component and you need to protect yourself or the companies against the other two components. And this is a different discussion, like AV companies, blah, 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 threat intel. I'm not going to discuss about this one here. There was a question. There was a Reddit Ask Me Anything with the CERT, Romanian CERT team. And somebody said, what are we going to do if Russia or somebody else, they're going to start creating an influential network? Do we have a chance to discover this network, trying to influence our elections, or not? And basically, the CERT guys, they said, whatever you said above, it's not in our capabilities or our duties. We don't have to do anything about it. It's not our job. It's not my job to do it. Fuck it, I'm out. Then whose job is it? Is it the government's job? Is it the public sector job? Is it the private sector job? Is it like independent journalism? I think it's everybody's job, and also your job as well. So, with this being said, I would like to say that on this day, some many years ago, the prohibition ended in America. So let's all cheer for that and cheer for 2 years of Security Espresso. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Dan. If anyone has a questions, here's the mic.
And if you have anything to disagree on with Dan, he's on the Telegram channel as well, just so you know.
Yeah. But we can also debate here, like.
Not exactly a question, but trying to stress out something. You've talked about mass opinion manipulation, which is kind of awesome. No, rarely someone talks about that, and I enjoy that very, very much.
Thank you.
And it all relates to the old computing problem of PEBCAC, and that's practically the problem sits between chair and keyboard. If someone doesn't know the acronym. And the mass opinion manipulation is practically mass social engineering. At least I see it like that. And to add something to your presentation, you talked about literacy. Yes, it's a valid point, but it's not the only problem, because we have highly educated people that do not have the critical thinking in order to discern fake news from real news. And we're talking about people with college degrees. So critical thinking is a step above, and we have that problem because educated people do not have the critical thinking in order to discern the reality. And that might be a subject and a few other slides to add in your presentation. That's
Thank you very much for this addition. Yeah, indeed. I think this is like a layered approach. You have like uneducated people who believe really easily, like some of the news stuff. Then you have like educated people, like they might believe something else, and you might have to use other measures to help them identify stuff. And yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. Question, yes.
So I have this friend who ran a business out of in this disinformation business. It's a very good business.
Yeah. I'd like to meet your friend.
Sure. And I can tell you it has very much to do with marketing.
Yeah.
Do you know that? Can you sense the connection between this and marketing?
Well, I would say the first thing is that if in the past disinformation was very hard to target specific people, nowadays it's very easily to target person X, Y, and Z with a different message.
So, to the point of the previous person who said that it's about critical thinking, I can tell you for a fact that nobody can be immune to fake news dissemination.
Clearly.
It doesn't matter how illiterate and how educated you are. You cannot be immune to fake news. The only thing that matters when it comes to fake news dissemination, the most important thing is volume, by far. You do not influence the persons that participate in a conversation. However, people will react to the vast majority that tries to impose an opinion. If 80% of the participants in a conversation have an opinion, people reading that thread will be influenced by those 80% that have an opinion.
That's basically tribalism.
Yeah. And also, Goebbels said that, you know, if you say a lie 1,000 times or a sufficient amount of times,
It becomes true.
It becomes true.
It becomes true. Yeah, clearly. Or if you don't debunk something at an early stage, it's game over.
And I'm afraid there's no such thing as fact-checking these days.
Well, honestly, I believe that there are some things that I do believe that they are false. The question is, what's the amount of facts that you believe that might be false? If it's super high, then you have a problem. You try to like read from a lot of sources to see if what you think is actually true. But yeah, you're right. You know, I don't think there is one person who might be like immune to this stuff. Welcome to our world, I guess. So are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Hello?
I'll move here. So I want to play devil's advocate for a bit about your internet balkanization.
Balkanization.
Okay. VKontakte actually is founded by the same guy who founded Telegram.
Yeah.
And he is against the Russian government. He has like his political views are against. So
clearly, yeah.
Yeah. So they doing that service is not like a Russian government service, and the same is with the search engines, because the reason there is a different search engine in China and Russia isn't because the government want to do it. It's because there is no other search engine there. Google failed. Google retired from China in 2010, and now they're
coming back.
Yeah, there's a whole mess about that. Yeah. So I just wanted to point out that that is not like a full argument. Yes, there is a Balkanization, but that's like not a government push to do it.
Yeah, but you know what I think, okay, so Google backed out and now it's coming back. But if you read the terms, it's coming back.
Google is going to be... Terms.
Those are bad terms. Basically what Google does, they're saying, okay, we want some market share, we want to earn some money. We're going to come here, we obey by your rules, you control the content we're giving out to the people. Basically, this is not different than their search engine. And this means that actually Balkanization and the search engines that are allowed and published and promoted by the governments are actually more controlled and more manipulative than other players who got kicked out just because they were not playing ball.
Yeah, well, they left by their own will, but because of those conditions.
Sure, but you know, like, just the fact that they left and they're coming back and we're coming back with those terms, I think this means that there's like a huge balkanization in China.
Yeah, for China, that was definitely the whole...
There might be on other countries as well.
Okay, thank you.
Google is going for the ads, yeah. So, yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah, they want the money. They want the money. But they, of course, they also will they will also have the search. They need a search to display ads.
No. Okay,
hello?
So you're talking about Facebook and Twitter and the social networks. Do you think that the creators of Facebook knew what was going to happen? Did they have any idea that the manipulation would go outside of marketing and...
Well, I think not. I think they just created a service. Well, there are a lot of theories that Facebook is backed by some state agencies, blah, 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 blah. No, I think they just created a service like it happened before in the US. They didn't know what's happening, but now the service got overturned or like got abused. And this is directly connected to the fact that active measures existed even before internet, but it was harder for governments to do it. Now it's easier for people to actually, for agencies or whoever wants to do fake news, it's easier to target people. So I think we're gonna wrap up now. I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, very much.
Thank you.
I'll take a short break, and immediately afterwards we'll continue with the next talk. Thank you. Okay, so we'll continue now with our first talk. Our first talk is actually a panel, and we have here our guests. I'll introduce Andrada Fiscutano first. Hey, Andrada. Andrada is a great journalist, and she talked at Security Espresso before, and you will be moderating the panel tonight, so here you go.
Thank you so much, Anatol. Can you hear me well? Enough? Okay, perfect. So first of all, I would like to give a round of applause to the first speaker, to Dan, for an awesome talk earlier today. And one more round of applause for Anatol and Sabina, who because we are celebrating 2 years of Security Espresso today. And a third round of applause for our speakers today here in the panel. Thank you. Let me introduce you to Dumitra Dragoș, if you don't know her. She's the co-founder of B-Sides Bucharest community. And when she was a teenager, you were in high school, you wanted to become a sports journalist because you liked watching football. What is your favorite team?
In which country?
I don't know. Pick one.
Okay, so for tonight I cheer for, let's see, Manchester, Benfica, Real. Oh, sorry. So tonight I cheer for Benfica, Real, Manchester United. I think Bayern is playing as well, so should I continue with more countries?
Thank you so much. We also have Jay here. Jay works for Bitdefender. He started being a security evangelist when Red Hat 6.0 was state of the art. What year was it?
I think it was about 1999, 1998. I don't know how many of you remember Red Hat. I think Red Hat 6.0. Okay, and do you remember the FTP server embedded in Red Hat 6.0? It was known to provide remote root access since 1998, yeah.
But what I like about Jay is that he's the perfect security researcher a journalist would like to talk to, because I once called him at 10:30 p.m. and he answered, and he's really involved in social causes in Romania.
For most of us, that's practically morning.
And we also have a special guest tonight. Let's welcome Nate Lee from TradeShift. He's in charge of security for this unicorn that's having quite a big team in Romania. You have about 150 people.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, working for you. How long was your flight? Because you came here from San Francisco,
yeah,
right?
It was about 24 hours door to door. I think I landed last night at 1 in the morning.
And I also have a fun fact from Nate. You were in 6th grade when
I probably should have thought this through before I gave that one to you. But
so you were in 6th grade when your teachers wanted to do something about your future?
they did, yes. They tried to put me in special education. It's true. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
I didn't luck out.
So since you have the microphone, if you were to remember just one thing that happened in everything related to security this year, what would that thing be? What's the takeaway for 2018? Because we're getting ready to wrap up the year.
So, and this might be a reflection of my short-term memory, but actually I think the recent NPM event where Flatmat Stream was, someone had taken over control of the project and pushed that up, kind of really showed a lot of the weaknesses in how much we trust third-party code that we're loading and building and running, and it's not getting a lot of visibility. I think that's probably going to be a much larger issue in the future.
Mm-hmm. I would also like to ask Dimitra the same thing. What's your takeaway?
My takeaway for this year is that default configs are worse than attackers for our security posture.
And Jay, what have you noticed at Bitdefender this year?
At Bitdefender? Sorry, I cannot confirm or deny any such information.
I know, you can neither confirm nor deny.
I guess the fact that GitHub got hacked. Oh, that's not public yet, sorry. Obviously there's the Marriott, was it? hack, yeah, where they purchased a hotel chain and that hotel chain got hacked. Was that a surprise for anybody? No. So I guess that's not that big of a news, right? Or Quora got hacked. Was that a surprise for anybody? So I guess one of the key takeaways for 2018 is that big companies getting hacked is not a surprise to anybody anymore.
And what was your main challenge, the main challenge that you faced?
Well, personally, amongst other things that I do is I manage a bug bounty program for Bitdefender. And I have to admit there's still this struggle between some critical issue, not necessarily critical, but an issue getting reported and then the time to fix. So I have to admit that's still a struggle that we have, I guess most companies have internally. But to the point of bug bounties, because I guess I'm going to touch on that at some point later on, I'm happy to see that more and more companies adopt the concept of ethical hacking. And there's more and more companies that appear on Bugcrowd, that appear on HackerOne, or running programs of their own. So I guess 2018 was an explosion in this area as well, and I'm very, very happy for that.
Okay, let's remember the bug bounty program that you remember, because we're going to get back to it in a few minutes. But I would like to also ask Nate, what was your biggest challenge this year? Because you're the security guy in charge of everything at a startup that's doing some, I don't know, crazy amounts of financial transactions.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's all the different technical challenge, but I think a lot of it also comes down to people. I mean, most of my team is sitting out here as well, and some of the things, like even just basic stuff like running phishing tests. We send out some fake emails to people. If you tell them that the attachment has everyone's salary in it, they're going to open it. I mean, we get better click-through rates than the marketing team. So I think people, it's just the easiest path in most of the time.
Yeah. How about you, Demeter? Your biggest challenge, from your point of view?
Biggest challenge?
Yeah.
Well, I work in a company that tries to adopt the newest technology to be able to process petabytes of data every second. So keeping up with all the new shiny toys and a way to secure it was my biggest challenge this year. Because, yeah, that's why I mentioned default configs. We all know Docker, Kubernetes, and all those goodies.
I would go back to Jay a bit.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning the struggle that we've had with vendors. So we do have a few labs that do vulnerability research on stuff that's not ours necessarily. Obviously, to make the internet a better place and for some PR attention of our own. And we've struggled a lot with vendors that had literally hundreds of thousands. Some of them had more than 500,000 devices in the market with RCs in all of them. And we had a lot of difficulties getting in touch with them to get them to fix their stuff and get their customers out of danger. We even ended up talking to their supply chain managers. I mean, to the likes of Best Buy and so on and so forth to try to get Best Buy to talk to them. And that was, again, a really, really big struggle to get in touch with the vendors and get them to be aware of the vulnerabilities that they had in their products. Again, big names, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, put together devices that are affected.
You mentioned bug bounty programs before. Are they efficient from your point of view? Because I've seen a lot of people talking about this on Twitter this year, saying that many companies do adopt bug bounty programs, but they just check a couple of things, having a false feeling of security. What do you feel about that?
So it's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, for you guys, it's much easier, and this is probably not necessarily the best audience, honestly, to pitch this kind of ideas, because everybody has pretty much the same mindset in this room. But I was doing this talk at a healthcare convention about a month ago in Brasov, and I asked the audience, all of them were hospital directors, pharmaceutical company directors, and I asked them, somebody tells you that they've hacked your infrastructure and they've managed to access the database with your customers or with your patients. Do you report them to the police? And unfortunately, there were like 4 or 5 hands raised in the audience. And as scary as this sounds, the fact that the guy told them about it is a big step forward from somebody just going through and publishing the database on the deep web. So the whole concept of ethical hacking and legislature, first of all, needs to be regulated. The Bitdefender bug bounty program is wildcard. Anything that has the Bitdefender name on it is in scope of the bug bounty program. And as it turns out, you learn so much about the creativity of hackers and the creativity of researchers when you're running a bug bounty program. And obviously, you learn the thing that you should know as a security researcher, that the thing that you know for a fact is that you don't know everything, right? And there's so many ways in which you can get hacked, and there's so many ways in which your assets can get compromised, and learning about them through the bug bounty program is literally the only way you can learn about all the things that can happen to you.
What do you think that should be changed in terms of regulations or policy when it comes to ethical hacking? Do you think, is there a way to make it safer?
I have a very unpopular opinion on that.
Oh, we'd love to hear that.
So, if you think about black hats, gray hats, white hats, yellow hats, green hats, rainbow hats, and so on and so forth, my personal position is leveling the playing field and allowing ethical hacking all the way. So that means that if I want to test I don't know, TechHub.ro, right, and pen test it and fully evaluate it and try to hack into it, I should be allowed to do it, as long as I'm doing responsible disclosure. Arguably, this is, again, a much harder pill to swallow for law enforcement. However, there's a chance that I will tell you about it, right? So it's a better chance than somebody else doing it and not telling you about it. So that's kind of my position on that. It's a very difficult case to make. I was actually doing this conference in Nepal just 2 weeks ago, and the government was in the audience. And they did a panel like this one, and I asked the Nepali government what they do about allowing ethical hacking and what they do about, you know, making sure that the infrastructure is essentially that makes your infrastructure and your assets more secure by allowing people to hack them and telling you about it. You know, it's like Schrodinger's vulnerability, as I always like to say. It's just the fact that you didn't discover it doesn't mean it's not there. And the moment you discover it doesn't mean that's the moment it appeared. It was there a long time before you discovered it, and people might have exploited it for a long time, right? So, and the Nepali government said that they're looking into it, but the audience, there were like a few hundred people in the room, all of them started to cheer and all of them started to clap their hands and said that yes, they want to be allowed to do it legally and ethically.
I would also like to ask Nate, what is your opinion on this? Do you agree with what Jay said, or on the contrary?
I'm a huge fan of bug bounty programs. I mean, I think for us, it's been by far the biggest thing that we've done to improve security on the platform. We had pen tests because customers want them, but pen tests turn up 6 or 7 bugs. I think when we first turned on the bug bounty program, it was to 5 or 10 people, and poor Eric over there got an avalanche dumped on his head. So yeah, I mean, it's been super helpful. I think when it comes to regulation, I would say that I agree that you should be able to test, excuse me, you should be able to test anything you want and be able to disclose it. I think the regulations have to take into account, people will obviously try to abuse that to maliciously hack and then I guess not do disclosure, so making sure that there's clear guidelines that everyone is able to agree to and you know, set that out so there's just like clear rules and a playing field for everyone.
When I watched Dan's talk earlier this evening, for a fraction of a second, I thought of Edward Snowden, and I felt that, well, in 2018, it might be increasingly difficult to be a whistleblower, and maybe things are going to get even harder next year or in the following years. And as a journalist, this is a problem to me. How do you feel that? Is it becoming more difficult to be a whistleblower, or what are the issues there?
Yeah, I mean, clearly they're looking to make an example of people, and with the amount of different ways you can have things tracked back to you and different ways that they can bend the law to try to penalize whistleblowers, I think it's more dangerous and risky than ever, which also makes many of these people more and more brave. And I mean, it takes a lot of guts to do some of the, if you think something is morally incorrect and leaking that out, knowing you're basically forfeiting your life like Edward Snowden did. I mean, he's got to live somewhere else, can't see his family anymore. So also the amount of bits of OPSEC you have to get right to do some of these leaking, I mean, that's hard stuff. Reality Winner sent the documents to The Intercept, and they sent them back to the NSA, and she got caught by printer code. So it's kind of, that's a lot of stuff to keep track of.
Yeah, and as far as I remember, I think Snowden needed 2 months in order to teach the journalists all the OPSEC routine required. Do you think we should do something in order to encourage people to speak up as a society? Should the tech sector come up with, I don't know, some creative ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should do more. I mean, obviously, transparency, you can't make great decisions as a democracy unless you have transparency and you know what's happening, right? So there are some tools, I think, I can't remember who developed them, but tools for anonymous submissions and things like that. But again, still, there's so many ways that can go wrong if you miss one little thing that, I mean, it really puts people at risk. And I think maybe to Dan's earlier talk, some of the stuff around manipulation of opinion on a mass scale. If you can turn the public against whistleblowers, that they're traitors and all of these things, then it makes it much easier. You don't even have to, penalize them directly. The people will do that for you. So I think there's many challenges to opening it up more.
I know that in your office in Romania, you're developing some sort of AI.
Yes,
because I saw a presentation, yes. And I would like to, I mean, a lot of people in cybersecurity talk about AI and machine learning. And how do you feel about these new, well, not quite new, but yeah, I don't know, fashionable technologies?
Very fashionable.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in general, a lot of times, there's the marketing layer that gets thickly coated on top of all of that. It's going to help kind of everything, especially a lot of these things that deal with high volume, right? For us, we do a lot of business transactions, so there's millions of documents, and if you're trying to figure out whatever you have to code an invoice with, that's the perfect sort of repeatable task for a bot or AI or machine learning. On the security side, I think anyone with a SOC that is getting all those alerts, same sort of thing. If you have 50,000 alerts or 1 million alerts, having something that can make sense of that at scale and use context to help your team is obviously a very good thing.
Thank you. Demeter, do you think that machine learning is hyped at the moment?
Yeah, it is. It's basically statistics. Statistics have been around for a while, but it's statistics in code, so it's fashionable. We call it machine learning, and then putting multiple models together, we call it artificial intelligence. But it does help triaging a lot of data. As I stated before, we'd need to look through petabytes of logs. So yeah, machine learning is really helpful to see outliers, to do clustering, to see what's out of the ordinary in your environment. You cannot track all the servers and all the users all the time. And in a server environment like the one I'm monitoring, attackers usually, they call it living by the land, so they use the sysadmin tools on the host. So it's getting even harder to detect a malicious act.
I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience in 5 minutes, so do prepare if you have ideas. Also, I think Sabrina could help us with a couple of questions from our Telegram channel, if there are. But before that, I would like to ask you about the future of privacy. How do you feel about it? Because I feel that privacy is quite important for democracy, and we're expecting a couple of elections next year in several European countries.
I wish I could say that I believe in privacy, but seeing
no.
all the but I don't. I believe in the fact that we no longer have privacy. I think that we're just a token in someone's marketing algorithm, and it's hard to block your content because it's not your username, it's not your IP. Mm-hmm. It's getting harder and harder. So I don't believe that we have privacy, but we can, put more effort into how we take the data.
Raise the cost of attack.
Exactly. Raise the cost of attack and also put more effort in analyzing all the data that's bombarding us and make our choices wisely.
Nate, what do you do to, I don't know, protect your privacy as much as you can?
I'm sure not enough, to your point. I mean, after a while I had to start, well, switch to like DuckDuckGo for browsing or using incognito mode, and a lot of that was, I kept getting freaked out because I'd search for something and the next day in the middle of whatever I'm reading, there's like a ad for rash ointment or something. So, so I mean, just knowing that all of this is going into some giant profile, I mean, as much as possible, trying to make things that less trackable to you, switching to Cloudflare's DNS on my phone and my computer, but I think at the end of the day, it's all semi an illusion. I'm sure Google just knows what IP I come from and logs that anyway, so.
How about you, Jay? Don't give us that look.
We're all just super depressing.
I'm not. I made peace with my overlords. So
acceptance is the last stage of grief.
I guess that
I'm not sure if this panel is useful or not, but at least we're having fun.
So I have this segregation of data policy in my mind where if I need something to be private, then I'm going to use the proper channels to make sure that that stuff is private, like Tor or Signal or whatever, right? Actually, I would have reasons not even to mistrust, you know, to not trust even Signal or Wire or Threema, whatever the fuck Threema is. And in the old days, we used to SSH in a server and use whitetalk. Who here has ever heard of whitetalk on Unix machines? Yeah. So if we wanted to talk something that we wanted to make sure it's actually really, really private, the only client and software that we would use would be SSH and whitetalk, right? And for all intents and purposes, that's as secure as you can get, because anything else is just developed by somebody else, and nobody, as much as you want, nobody that does those thorough source code audits to make sure that the Signal or whatever doesn't leak data. But with that in mind, what I do is segregate the information. So I don't care about anything. I don't have a camera on my, I don't have a sticker on my camera. I use an iPhone, I use an Apple devices, and I don't care if marketing people track me and sell me stuff. Sorry. So I'm gonna be that person in the security industry that says that I don't care about my privacy in this regard. However, if there's something that has to be private, then in that particular moment, I make the effort and focus my efforts to make sure that that information stays private. So if I want to leak something, I'm going to do it properly, and I know how to do it, right? So that's kind of my approach on privacy. I've seen so many ways in which data gets leaked, and I actually did a talk on this at DEF Camp. Let me ask you something. How many of you care about privacy? Really? How much?
How should we respond to this?
Because so there's machine learning engines in the keyboards on our phones. So when we use our phones to communicate, there's machine learning in the keyboard software that learns what you're typing and sends that for correlation and aggregation and popular keywords and all that stuff to remote servers. There's so many mechanisms that we may or may not be aware of that track us, that no matter how much DuckDuckGo we use, we're still being tracked by other things, right?
So do you know what I tell to people who don't care about their privacy? And I've learned this from Glenn Greenwald, the journalist who covered the Snowden case. I watched the talk, and he said at some point, so if there's someone in this room who doesn't care about their privacy, then I would ask that person to email me their usernames and passwords for every account, and as a journalist, if I will find a story there, I will write it.
Well, arguably, that's a very far-stretched example. Because there's one thing to be profiled for marketing purposes, there's one thing to be profiled by Big Brother for whatever purposes they have. And I would say pick your battles. For example, in privacy, I would definitely start fighting very actively, and I would personally, actually, I want to do that, and I've actually talked to some members of the parliament in Australia. Australia wants to backdoor encryption. Now, that's a fight that's worth fighting, right, in terms of privacy. because that's effectively decreases the security for everybody. Now, that I would get involved in, right? So, UK has some projects for some ridiculous laws. Germany, same thing. Those are actually movements and some actions that I would want to be involved in. Again, personally, I will get involved in that.
Nate, I would like to talk to you a little bit about things in the US, because California pushed legislation for a low password this autumn, I think it was. And also there were talks about hackback. What do you think? Do you think that the security community is more aware of the things that could happen, or Silicon Valley in general tackled some issues that would have seemed, I don't know, sci-fi a couple of years ago?
I'm not sure if Silicon Valley has any more insight, maybe more influence, but like clearly there's many, many mistakes coming out of Silicon Valley when it comes to privacy and protecting users. I mean, at the end of the day, most of those companies are trying to sell ads and make money, and that's kind of the top priority, and everything kind of shuffles somewhere lower than that. So great technical advances coming out of there, but not always with the best interest at heart. So from that end of things, I think you have to look at where different companies are motivated from and what their actual goals are when it comes to how they're driving technology out and how that affects people's privacy.
Okay, thank you. Do we have questions from the audience? Oh, great.
I would like to share my experience with with disclosing a critical vulnerability.
To be defender.
No, to IBM.
I'm sorry, did I laugh out loud?
I wouldn't have expected this. A couple of weeks ago, during a penetration test, I have discovered a 0-day in one of their fiber channel switches. And of course, I went to IBM. They have a product security incident response team, which very promptly pointed me to HackerOne. Now, I didn't want to release it to HackerOne because one of the terms of the agreement is that you do not disclose it to anyone before they reach a conclusion. But I had to write my penetration test report, so at least I would have to disclose it to my customer. Nevertheless, I have created myself a HackerOne account. I have posted my report, and then, as you may imagine, there was an internal IP address, as in RFC 1918, like 192.168. I have posted 2 such private addresses, and I have been asked by a HackerOne staff member, I am having difficulties reaching this system.
No.
So you sold the 0-day to Zerodium?
No, I did not. But then someone else from IBM took over and said that they're no longer selling this product, so I should go to Lenovo. Rinse and repeat. Lenovo told me that actually it's a Marvel product which has acquired QLogic, which has created, yes, the firmware in the first place. Now the firmware is actually a embedded Linux. So there is not a serviceable operating system. You, as a user, as the owner of the device, you cannot just log onto the switch and update it yourself like a package manager or something. You have to update the firmware. But there is no security advisory. And actually it's a remote root. You instantly become root, no authentication. I mean, you don't have to be a user on that system or something. You just go there and you're root. And I know many customers will not update the firmware. You know, if it ain't broken, you won't fix it. So as we're speaking now, there are probably lots of such devices in the wild. And neither of those vendors would publish a security advisory, let alone a CVE or bug bounty. IBM does not pay money. I didn't care, but again, I believe they have the funds to...
Why don't you publish the CVE yourself?
Because as an ethical hacker, I have to think about the customers who do not know about the vulnerability.
60 days, publish it, because what you find, so the whole concept of Schrödinger's vulnerability, well, my concept of Schrödinger's vulnerability, is what you found, somebody else will find as well. This is why it's important to make it public. I mean, you're a special person, but not that special, right? So tell me if what you found is not something that somebody else can find as well, right?
Absolutely.
So somebody else may not be so ethical about it and may start hacking the devices. So make it public.
Thank you.
There was another question there in the back.
Also not a question, but your remark about Australia trying to backdoor encryption reminded me of one of my favorite quotes from people who just don't get security. It was an Australian politician, if you want I can give you his name, who was told that encryption is governed by the laws of mathematics and they can't actually do or legislate whatever they want. And he said, and I quote from memory, "The laws of mathematics are commendable, but the only law that applies in Australia is the law of Australia."
Do we have more questions from the audience? Until you think of more questions to ask our audience, I do have one more question for Nate. There's a difference between Romania and the US when it comes to education. In the US, a lot of people have a major in a technology field. For instance, you major in computer science, and a minor, which often is from a totally different field, such as philosophy. In Romania, we don't have that. Do you think that people should talk more about what they do and to think about the philosophical issues that apply to technology? Because as I see it from where I'm standing, is that a lot of people in tech develop tools because they are cool to develop, but don't get to ponder on the potential consequences of that.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, kind of the point earlier about Silicon Valley only thinking about one thing. A lot of these people are brilliant technologists. They come up with great technology and these new services, but haven't really thought through the full scale of considerations of what happens with that. Like with Facebook causing polarization, Google allowing, well, I guess better marketing and classification of being able to deliver messages to people more efficiently. Twitter, same sort of thing with being able to spread disinformation much more quickly. And then even when some of these things are pointed out, a lot of these companies, I mean, they're still looking at the money, right? And they don't know what to do. You look at Facebook and Twitter, and they're maybe they care, but obviously ethics and some of these other things haven't really been embedded at a deep level with a lot of both the core executives and I mean, the engineers a lot of them are, kind of bright-eyed and they're excited to work at one of these companies, and they're going to go along for the ride. So, yeah, any amount of self-reflection that people can have about what they're doing, what they're building, obviously that's always going to be a good thing, I think.
Demeter, do you agree with Nate or not?
Well, yeah, and I think I'm one of the exceptions in the tech industry. I actually finished political sciences, so I have that thought, and even when I listened to the earlier talk about manipulation, and then you mentioned whistleblowers and disclosing information, I think that another issue is that we do not think about our role when we disclose information. The fact that we might put some countries in an advantaged position. And also, when we do release 0 days or vulnerabilities, again, we might affect the game without knowing.
thing that I often think about, Nate, is that we often have to choose, well, an ethical dilemma, theoretically, is having to choose between something that is, I don't know, deontological, which often means not my business, and something that is utilitarian, which means it's something for the people. Do technologists in the US, do you feel that they think a lot more about this stuff than we do, because they set the tone for the whole industry? Or what would you like them to think about in 2019?
I mean, I think it's just more of what could the impact be, and how are you going to deal with unforeseen impacts? I mean, with Uber, it was, hey, we're going to democratize travel, and it ends up that it increases driving in cities, which is causing more gridlock and pollution, and you have a bunch of contractors who aren't going to have benefits, and when autonomous driving comes in, these are all going to be people who haven't been on the job market for a decade, aren't going to have healthcare, aren't going to have sort of marketable skills. How are you going to deal with that? So I think there's the utilitarian side of like, hey, this is this great service, it's fun to use, and it's maybe convenient, but what's kind of the larger impact? And hopefully people are starting to take that into consideration in the design phase. But then also, understanding that there might be unforeseen consequences of what we're building, and how are we going to deal with that in the future, especially if it goes against our profits.
If you were to have a beer with Mark Zuckerberg, what would be the thing that you would tell him? Because he had a tough year, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm not even sure, really. I mean, I think it's probably very hard for him, right? He's in, I'm sure, quite a bubble of where he's getting information from and his perspective. But I think it would probably be to go out and actually, yeah, I mean, like, see some of the impact that the product has had on well, all of globally, basically, as far as manipulation of people's thoughts through fake news or whatever, and how that's affected the world. And I mean, they give it lip service to how they're going to take it seriously and start working on that, but clearly that's not enough, right? They need to really step out of their comfort zone and make a decision. Is it profits only, or are we going to be doing things that might cut into profits in order to make a better world?
Awesome. I think there was one more question.
Yes. Yeah. I have not really a question, but let's say I want to engage with Jay over there and tell you my point of view regarding bug bounties and ethical hacking and all this kind of stuff. As a security person, I am very aware that we need to carefully regulate this, and we cannot let all the nutheads with a gun go on the street and start attacking businesses. So this needs to be very carefully regulated. So I'll give you an example. You have a door. What happens if 10 people try to pick your door? You could say, okay, that's fine. The door will survive. If 1,000 people try to pick your door, then probably the door will go down. And then, unfortunately for you and your business, you'll encounter losses. So you need to be very, let's say, aware that you are opening yourself to this kind of attacks when you say, I'm here, just throw everything at me. So that's why I'm saying it needs to be properly regulated and be an opt-in program, not let all the nutheads. Do you agree with this or not?
I disagree.
You disagree. Then let me know where you live, so I have a few friends. We can pay a visit.
So first of all, I just wanted to say, if I had a beer with Zuckerberg, I guess my first reaction would be, can I have your stuff? I mean, I would imagine that it's insanely tempting to try to process all the data that Facebook has. I cannot fathom how much restraint Zuckerberg has to have, if he has it, to not profile everybody in all the means possible, in all the ways possible. And I would drool over the overall graphs and statistics from Facebook users, definitely. To your point, there's one thing which would be a brute force attack, right? Like 10,000 people banging on my door, the door would collapse, right? That's a brute force attack, and that's a different situation.
You cannot control that. You just say to everyone, if you want to pick the door, I'm here. Just try to pick it.
Well, I think that the thing that needs to be regulated would be simply intent. If it's a malicious intent, you go to jail. If it's a non-malicious intent, you thank the person.
Hard to prove.
Well, definitely it's hard to prove, but if your door lock has a vulnerability that enables somebody to pick it, then the odds are that somebody with malicious intent will pick it and not tell you about it and rob your house, right? If you allow everybody...
I can accept that risk. What I cannot accept is 10,000 people trying to pick it, because that will DDoS my door.
Well, again, DDoS is not a good example, but
it will happen.
But it wouldn't, not necessarily, because there is a very good chance that all the bad guys are already trying to pick your door. So that's kind of where I'm getting at. So let's say that you're a high-profile company.
Yeah, but that's a crime.
Well, yeah, but you know, bad guys don't really care about that.
It's still a crime.
But again, bad guys and cyber criminal organizations don't really care about the law. And at this point, the law is handicapping people that want to help.
Yeah, but when I'm giving you a free out-of-jail ticket, then you can abuse it. Anyway, so you do not agree with my point of view?
Well, let's just say that not entirely.
Okay, fair enough. That's not a debate.
I do.
You do agree. Okay.
One last question.
Nate, do you agree with this debate or not?
I mean, I would actually say I think it does depend on intent. I do agree that there's difficulty proving it one way or another, because bad guys are, of course, going to try to hide if they can to try to find a way to say, I wasn't trying to hack you to steal stuff. But to Jay's point, you're going to have 10,000 people trying to hack you anyway. So you saying you don't want that isn't going to stop anyone that is malicious anyway. So you're kind of only hurting yourself if you're trying to turn people away. I mean, which is your decision, of course, but...
One last question.
From an ethical point of view, what all of you think about the cyber agencies which find vulnerabilities and choose to use it in their own country's advantage rather than disclose it?
Oh, so does Romania have 0 days?
No, shadow brokers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a better example.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the idealist in me says, yes, you should turn those in and help the greater good. But realistically, right, they're spy agencies, and that's kind of their gig. So, yeah, I guess I'm torn both ways on it.
Double standard, anyone?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if it's a double standard. It's just, in which sense? If I'm a spy, then yes, I'm going to, that might be what I'm going to do, but I'm not a spy, and so I would say, yes, you should share that out.
I guess to your point, you're putting people in jail for stuff that you're doing yourself, right? That's what it's, okay. But that's not the point. To your point, if there's a vulnerability in, random example, the SMB service in Windows, right? And you sit on it, the fact that that's bad. I mean, it doesn't matter if your intent is good. It doesn't matter if you're a patriot or whatever, or a spy, and you're trying to help your country. If the vulnerability is there, can be exploited, you can get full RC, then definitely it should be disclosed and fixed. I mean, that's like, there's no question around that. There's absolutely no way to go around that. If there's a critical vulnerability in a system, has to be disclosed, has to be fixed. Because as I was telling the other gentleman earlier, what you've discovered, Israel can discover, Russia can discover, other people can discover. Nobody's that special, and software is flawed, as we all know, right? Again, if the vulnerability was discovered, doesn't matter who discovered it. If you don't report it, you suck.
And on that note, we're going to close the panel. Thank you so much for being here, Jay, Nate. Thank you for flying 24 hours to come to Romania and Demeter. And I hope that we're all going to have a quiet year in 2019. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys. On this note, just before ending our anniversary edition, we'll have one more slide that we'll put up in a second. So, how is today's edition for you guys? Awesome. What would you like more to see here?
The slide.
Sursa. Logo?
You'd like to hear about. No, it's fine.
And just after this, you're all invited to have a slice of pizza and discuss about the rest of the topics that you didn't get time to ask. After that, you're all invited to Tunes in All City to celebrate our 2-year anniversary.